when it comes to investing, what do you think about? A lot of you might think, well, I can invest in property, I can invest in shares. A lot of you might think, well, I can invest offline and do an unlisted type business. Unlisted is an asset that isn't on a securities exchange. So today we are talking about really the only six types. Today we're talking about the, I would probably say the only six things that you can invest in your life. We're doing this podcast today for those who might be new listeners. We've got a lot of new listeners, and thank you for sharing this show with your friends. And for those who want a bit of a health check or a tune-up on their life situation. We can't do this podcast without Sphere Home Loans have customers, clients, and our listeners that they help all over Australia. Mortgage brokers, they have your best interest in mind. The team at Sphere are covered by the best interest duty, which means by law, they have to act in your best interest. It is law. I use a mortgage broker next time you need a loan for a property. We're going to get into the six things that you can invest in. My name's Glen James, joined by John Pigeon from the This Is Property podcast. And this one right here is money. Or This Is Money. Here we go. John, welcome back to the podcast.
Pleasure, as always, Glenn.
How's This Is Property going?
It is killing it.
Good little show, that.
Well, I don't know. It's trending towards medium, upgrading from little, I'd say.
Yeah, so I often listen to that podcast myself, just to mainly just to pick up and call you out on things that you're not doing right now. Joking. I listen to it as a listener, and for those who might not know, we've got a variety of different podcasts, and I don't really have any say in the content that the hosts do, and that's why it's a surprise to me when I see an episode pop up of a Wednesday on This Is Property. It's like, oh yeah, I'd be interested in that. So thanks for doing that, John and Emily.
No, pleasure. Look, nothing makes my day more than you ringing me saying, gee, that was a good episode, John.
I did that the other day, didn't I?
You did.
Yeah.
I was fist pumping the whole day.
Oh, well, there you have it. Hey, today we are talking about the things that you can actually invest in. There's six of them, and it's a bit of a holistic chat about money and life. And I'm just going to tell the six things now, and then we're going to go into detail on each of them. I believe you can invest in your health. I believe you can invest in your relationships. I believe that you can invest in your career. And then if we step up to the financial stuff, obviously there's shares, there's properties, and there's also business. And we're just going to spend a bit of time today chatting about these six things. And as I said at the top, John, more of a refresher or a re-encouragement or a bit of an intro if you are new to the podcast, that we're not all about the money here, because money helps, but it does fall short. If your health or relationships fail, you can have all the money in the world, but the money doesn't always help. So I might throw to you, John. When you coach clients and do your corporate seminars and whatnot, you often talk about these type of things and you rate them, but I'll just throw to you with a bit of an opening statement from you on this.
Yeah, so I suppose I broke them into three areas. I put health and relationships in one area as they're actually non-negotiables. I think we need to get both of those areas in our life right for different reasons.
Yep.
Business and career, we maybe start with a career and then roll into business.
That's good.
Bit of a combo of both throughout our journey, and then property and shares as an investment tool or a mechanism to create wealth. But I think high level we're thinking, well, what's the outcome as a result of improving ourselves in all of these six areas? And I just wrote some random sort of outcomes like improved energy, satisfaction, enjoyment, self-worth, improved lifestyle, and obviously choices in our life. So all of those words bring us, I suppose, different outcomes. But I think understanding that there's no one size fits all in all this, and how you treat these 6 areas is totally up to you. But if you're continually working on the health and the relationships and your career, you have the ability to play the game in respect to investing through either property or shares.
That's actually really good. While you were talking there, for those who are watching this on YouTube, I've got my pen and paper here. I was just making some notes. I kind of just broke it down into, as you said, your 3 categories. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, this is good. I put, as you said, the health and relationships under have to. Next, the business and career is need to. Like, you really need to do this. And then the shares and property, it's great to.
Yeah.
Great to have.
Yeah.
It's great to grow your future wealth to look after yourself, right?
Totally. Yeah. And everyone starts on a different journey. Like, I did a workshop this morning in Sydney, and it's like everyone has different stories through their childhood, and some start earlier than others and focus on all of these individual areas at different times in their life. And it's a continual journey, isn't it?
And yeah, do you find, of those 6 things, what would you say that you're weakest in?
Oh, my wife might
Don't say property, or don't say property, or we might need to find a new host for the property podcast.
My wife and friends might say relationships when I'm too busy at work. But I mean, and this isn't sort of saying I'm perfect or anything, but I do spend a lot of time in all of these areas. Not so much shares. I generally outsource that stuff, but the other 5, and I put business and career in the same category because I am a business owner, but I feel as though it's a career, it's a journey for me within my business. So I'm consistently looking at this in my own situation, because if I'm not doing that, how can I help others do the same thing?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, for me, I think, and this is just fascinating, when I kind of looking at this, if I redrew it as kind of a pyramid, and you wanted the must need or have to at the bottom being health and relationships, they're not great for me, and I am working on that stuff, which we can get into. But yeah, the business and career, I've got that pretty nailed. Shares and properties, pretty nailed. So for me, you can have all the money in the world and still not have your health by your own doing or just life.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Just one point on the relationship, and relationships come in all shapes and sizes, don't they? Like close friends, family, and then an intimate partner that you might have in your life. I think that journey for me has definitely changed from the point of view of early days. It's like, well, what am I getting out of the relationship versus what am I giving? Now it's very much more focused on what am I actually giving to each relationship, more so than what am I taking.
Yeah. Now we'll finish on relationships first. I put a thing up in the Facebook group, This Is Money, for anyone to have comments. But one other thing, John, that I wanted to kind of talk about, just in terms of relationships, right, is just maybe in that category of just being nice to other humans. I honestly can't believe it that, I had to go into the post office the other day to pick up a parcel. You hear on, when you're on hold with a company, or there's signs up that we do not tolerate foul behavior towards our staff. And I get that there was a heightened sense of pressure and stress and anxiety, and anything was a bit of a blow-off valve for people during the pandemic. But we need to take those signs down now, and we need to continue to be nice to other people and strangers, because for me, I've just made a conscious decision to be nice at all times. And it's hard because you get frustrated and all that, but it's like, no, this person can't control this situation. Just be nice. And I think that is being nice to other humans that you relate to in a relationship, even if it is behind them in a checkout line. Like, just have grace for humans.
Yeah, totally agree. And that sign, you're right. It's everywhere now, unfortunately, and I think it's an entitlement thing. Why are we entitled to walk in and treat someone behind the counter like crap just because we're having a bad day? Like, it's not their fault. So it's we're all equal, sort of thing, and that's it does need to continue to change in that space. Like, even from, like, when we talk relations, and it's probably comes back to customer service. Like, yesterday, I've got a third automatic text from a real estate agent wanting to see if I wanted to sell my property. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a bit of fun with this. So I messaged back saying, yes, I'm interested. Please call me, right? And no one was getting back to the automated text. So all of a sudden, I sent another one, and then the phone rang, and it was the agent. I said, no, look, it's too late. You've had your chance. If you've got this system in place to take the place of human contact, you've lost me, and you've lost everyone else that I speak to in relation to your agency. So there's a part of technology that says, yeah, we're moving forward, but that human element, that relationship type, I don't think will ever go.
Yeah, and I did that big post on LinkedIn a couple of months ago about McDonald's now there is just no customer service.
Yeah.
It's all people just following the bouncing ball and all that. But, it's, I mean, my email from Australia Post, dear value customer, you've got mail. Well, you know my name, so I'm not that valued. Like Qantas, customer care. They don't actually care about their customers because you can't talk to customer care.
No.
You can only email them. And so, anyway, I just wanted to kind of touch on in terms of the relationships. I just want to read a couple of comments from the Facebook group. We might start with Amy. She said, we have a date night each week where one person plans it as a surprise for the other, and we have to do something we've never tried before. Gosh. We go on dates often, but the date isn't very quality time focused, and we both look forward to surprising the other and trying new activities. Sorry, and the date is very quality time focused. Continually, consciously speak to each other's love languages, even though they don't come naturally to each other. We often ask, is there anything that I'm doing that you don't love? And is there anything I'm doing that you want me to do more of? Daily melting hugs, and also getting excited when either of us is getting home. We travel a lot, privilege I know, but it is good for our souls and a value for us. See everything from the point of view of the other person, so it has no malicious intent. Communicate respectfully, take responsibility, and apologise. So
thanks, Amy Pigeon, for sending that one.
It wasn't bloody Amy Pigeon, I can tell you that much. Do you want to read the one from Phil?
I actually haven't got that. Did you?
Second page, bro.
No, did you say? I haven't got anything.
It's in the Google Doc,
mate.
It's a John problem. Did you print them?
No, you didn't send me anything. As in, you didn't send me anything about today's show.
You're so right. I'm learning with my relationships.
It's not a John problem.
Sorry, John Pigeon at Envisage.
My gosh.
There we go. And in true relationships, we have to say, John, I'm apologising. And I take responsibility.
Wow. I think we've come ahead and leaped some bounds right here.
We have. But I'll read another one while you dig that up. Alicia didn't say anything about relationships. Emily, couples counselling for a few sessions every little while. Read How to Not Hate Your Husband After Kids. It's a great book with sage advice. Communicate respectfully. Currently trying to prioritise me time and cannot pour from an empty cup. As cannot pour from an empty cup. As cannot pour from an empty cup.
Right, I'm back.
I'll get you to read Kate's at the bottom of page
Kate Muldoon. Okay, Kate says, controversial, but we have chosen not to have kids. We get to focus on each other and work at it every day through regular communication, chatting about our goals and working together on problem solving if we hit roadblocks in achieving them. Also, date nights and lazy weekends, home with no activities or socialising, just us time. Also, take the piss out of each other regularly. We are lucky in so many ways. I see how wonderful having kids is for many, but I also see how trying it is on relationships and how much they take the attention away from the intimate adult relationship. That's an interesting one, isn't it? And
yeah, it got a lot of response.
Yeah, because either way, you're going to sacrifice something. So it's about values and beliefs in your life, which is great. Well done, Kate.
Phil Thompson, who's a supporter of the podcast, and I'm only sharing these kind of 4 that had a higher amount of responses from Skywell. Thanks for your support. Great topic and probably not talked about enough. We've been married for almost 17 years and it is the most important thing we can invest in. We have been doing the following. 1, go for a morning walk once a week. Go on a date probably once a quarter. Make sure we have time to have tough conversations with and without the kids around. 4, we just signed up for a marriage course once a week for 10 weeks to continue to invest in our marriage. So
love that, Phil.
Yeah. So I think another important thing just in finishing, and the reason why I just wanted those things from the group is because I can't speak from any type of authority on it, relationships. So I just thought we would read some people from the group. But I will say, from what I've learned with relationships, John, it's 1, admitting that you're wrong, right? And communicating that like I did to you.
Yeah.
But I think more importantly, it's about taking responsibility. And if you haven't got the show schedule before we hit record, you need to speak up.
I knew there was going to be a but in this. You'll never learn. Now, yeah, you're
Am
right.
I that partner who's like, but.
No excuses, but yeah. Look, and I think from a relationship point of view, it's very much, as I said before, I was guilty of it. What can I get out of the relationship more so, and what am I giving? And I think that transparency is extremely key, isn't it? Just those that wipe things under the table continue to I suppose bottle underneath the surface, don't they, and just come out in a worse condition over time. So that communication is absolutely key.
All right, let's talk about health. I've kind of put this into a category of physical, mental, emotional, and some people have a spiritual health. Are there anything there that I missed in terms of the health thing? That would be it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, mental, physical, social.
Oh, yeah, social's a good health. Well, that's kind of emotional, though.
Probably is, yeah. Definitely spiritual. Yeah, I think you've covered it there. Yeah. It's actually quite complex when you break it down into those, isn't it? Like,
oh, totally.
We can say, we get 8 hours of sleep, so we're healthy, sort of thing, or we exercise every day, but eat fast foods every other day, sort of thing. There's very many different components of what makes up actually a healthy person.
Yeah. So, what do you kind of do how do you focus on your own health?
I suppose I've been very lucky over the years where I've been highly motivated to exercise, like a bit of a maniac, and just almost addicted to it. And if I don't do it, I'm not the best version of myself. So that the exercise part comes as a high priority to me, and in conjunction with that, sleep. You'll notice that I don't respond to too much after 8:30 at night, and that's by habit. But I suppose the other part, the parts that have been missing for me is that mental load throughout the day, and how to unpack that, and how to actually get things out into the open as opposed to building it up like a lot of us males tend to do. So that's probably been, and the spiritual part is more of a focus of, and it's not even, I don't know if yoga and deep breathing is considered spiritual, but it's definitely been more of a focus over the journey in the last sort of 12 months.
Yeah, if an atheist would be doing yoga, or deep breathing, they would be like, I'm just concentrating on my breathing and doing nothing.
Yeah.
And if someone spiritual was doing it, they can be like, well, I'm focusing on something else
That's
while I'm
right.
doing this. So,
Yeah. What about you? What are you focusing on at the minute, and what are your habits?
well, my physical shat is up to shat. I really struggle with routine and habit when it comes to my exercise and physical health. For me, it's just been daily kind of walking, which, since daylight savings kicked in, it's been a bit more of a challenge. I'm really leaning into the mental health thing, the emotional health. I just think it's so important. I'm reading a book at the moment called Attached, which kind of, and this is funny, the emotional stuff and mental stuff can impact the relationship stuff. And that's just such a recommend. We'll put a link in the show note to that book called Attached. I think every single person, whether you're single or not, you need to read this book. It is so wild. And yeah, so I've been going to a psychiatrist and psychologist, I guess, both of them, just really working on that part of my life. And I know if I pay attention on stuff, I get results from it. And that's like anything.
Yep.
But in the Facebook group, Alicia said, personal trainer and gym membership, healthy meal prep, getting enough sleep for physical health, seeing a psychologist regularly, setting boundaries with work and friends, taking time for my mental health, taking time for my mental health. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Do you want to read Kaylee's one there, the next?
No.
Page 2, top of page 2.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Kaylee. Is it Kaylee?
Keely.
Keely says, I've been paying for top cover private health insurance forever and hardly used it. End of last year, got diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of breast cancer, and the insurance meant that I haven't had to wait for appointments, and treatment was able to happen quickly and close to home. Able to have chemo in a private hospital where I didn't have to wait around and recover from surgery in my own room. That's a big game changer, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Keely. And I reckon with the health stuff, don't get private health insurance for your little extras crap. You buy private health insurance for the big stuff. You've got to go to hospital. If you've got to do other stuff I think, the solace there as well. It's like if you want to get cancer somewhere in the world, get it in Australia. We've got a really good support network. But yeah, it can be chalk and cheese just with the options. James said gym memberships and regular exercise. Prevention is very important. GP full blood tests yearly, dental and optometry appointments every 6 months. Being in the health field, I believe anything minor should get sorted out before it turns into a bigger health issue later on. Waiting for symptoms to show up before seeing a health professional can sometimes be too late. So, yeah, and here's a shout out. If you've not been to your doctor and had some blood tests for at least 3 years, at least 1 year, I would just book in and say, look, I just want a bit of a checkup.
Yeah, I think it's like, as I said, your dental, like you're doing it yearly, aren't you? Like your dental might be twice a year, but your blood tests yearly, I think, need to be a integral part of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're going to take a break and then we're going to come back and talk about career, business, shares and property. So I hope that's been just a bit of encouragement. If you thinking about your health or your relationships just in this first part, what can you change tomorrow? What can you keep doing? What should you stop doing? One of the things that stood out to me in that one, John, was when our Facebook commenter said they asked their partner, what am I doing that you want me to stop doing? Yeah. What do you like doing that you want me to do more of? So can you just take one thing away from that first half? We'll be back right after this. Rightio, we are back. Just some housekeeping. Remember, if you like money content and you want different money content, we've got the podcast, Financially Fierce, hosted by Jess Brady. She's a financial advisor. She'll help you get on top of your money even more, looking for your future, shape your money mindset, learn how to invest, get rid of bad spending habits, all the things. You can search Financially Fierce wherever you listen to this podcast. We've also set up a Financially Fierce Instagram page just to keep that a little bit separate. And also Retire Right. If you are over 50 or 55 and you want a little bit more purpose content to your unique challenges and opportunities that you've got as you're on the last 15, 10 years or past the working age or vibe, you can search Retire Right. Or you can send the Retire Right podcasts to your parents when they go, should we sell the house and do this? And you're like, no, listen to Retire Right podcast. And you'll be in great hands. You can search the Retire Right podcast wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. That's all the housekeeping this week. Let's get back into it. I'm just going to leave a note here. Far out. All right. So one of the big things that I've obviously been vocal on, John, we actually wrote a book about it, Sort Your Career Out and Build Your Future. No, and make more money. What's
Sort your property out and build your future.
That's right. Yeah. So we've got Sort Your Career Out. It's an awesome book that I wrote with Shell, the host of the This Is Work podcast. But I honestly think your career is your biggest financial asset. And if you are serious about it and you want to put in the time and invest into it, you'll have such a rewarding life. And could you imagine, John, if you're relationally healthy, you're physically healthy, and you've got lots of money coming in from your career, how good life would be? It'd be awesome, wouldn't it? So just in terms of this whole thing, like, I want you to ask yourself at the moment, do you just have a job or have you got a career? Are you building your job or are you building your career? Your job can stop at any time. Your job can be made redundant. Your job can make you really upset and annoyed. But your career, that is much more. It's about what your purpose is, what you do, what your thing is. And we've seen it before, like so many people are so wealthy, but you know, they need purpose, they need stuff, and you need to have some type of focus or reason for getting up of the morning. And part of the career and job thing is around this, you know, purpose. So you've got to really work out, what am I doing with my career?
Yeah, and I think the whole career thing, you explain it really well in terms of career versus job. Like, what do they say? A job is just over broke. That's the mindset of someone with a job, whereas someone with a career is always improving, always developing, always pivoting. And you mentioned about the purpose and having the drive, but also the enjoyment. Like, so many people I talk to personally are in positions or roles or industries that they just don't like and try to band-aid the rest of their life around how can I get out of this as quick as I can by maybe retiring early or something like that. Like when you work out 168 hours in the week and we work a 40-hour week, that's 24% of our life that we're not enjoying. So we've got to really pivot and change if we to maximise, because ultimately we spoke about relations and health before the break. We come home miserable from work. That affects relationships. It affects mental, physical health, and everything snowballs from there, doesn't it? So careers are so pivotal to so pivotal to our overall health and wellness. It's astounding.
Yeah, so I think that's what we're just kind of calling out. When was the last time you actively invested in your career? When was the last time you pulled over, put the bonnet up, had a look? When was the last time you asked yourself, do I like my job? Because your job is part of your career, but if it's just the job and you go from different jobs in different industries, that's probably not a career. So you need to ask yourself, self-reflection. Do you hate Mondays? Do you like what you do? Do you get overwhelmed and anxious when you've got to go and do a task at work? And I know I get overwhelmed and anxious. That is part of the job. If I got to do like radio interviews for some reason on TV, I get anxious. And when it's over, I'm like, oh. But it's not it's not an all day, everyday anxiety. So you just need to kind of just do a bit of a health check. And if in doubt, the book Sort Your Career Out and Make More Money, it will so help you pivot to the next thing, because you've got to take career risks. And in the book, we look at, what is a good career risk, because there are good risks to take. And the risk is effectively the execution, and the prep work can reduce the risk when you do execute.
Yeah, and Shell is such a genius in this space and has more to offer than I ever will. But I think you mentioned the Mondays, like the dreading Mondays is a surefire sign that we're probably not enjoying what we do. Whereas it might be a Thursday morning, you always have to perform a certain role. It might be just that part of the week that we don't enjoy. That's going to be life, isn't it? Whereas conceptually, if we're not enjoying the start of the next week, like, I don't know about you, but I don't live for Mondays, but I just really get excited to get into that next week and just tick some boxes and make a difference. If we're not going to be feeling that all the time. But if we generally have that feeling most of the time, it's a massive start to our health and wellness, isn't it?
Mm. And like, when was the last time you just looked at Seek or Glassdoor and had a bit of a look at, various roles and did a comparison and just seeing what's out there in the market? Because you've got to look after the person in the mirror cares about their career. No one else does as much as that person in the mirror. Like, you are the only one that cares about your career. So you need to always give it attention and give it maintenance, because if you don't, it will wither away and you'll end up unhappy. And that's the same with any of these investments, right? If you don't pay attention to it, things can go wrong over a period of time. And then you wake up going, oh, crap, that was a terrible dog of a portfolio. Why didn't I sell that 8 years ago? Oh, crap, I don't like my job. Why didn't I just sort this out 8 years ago? Like, it's all the same. And same with the health stuff, right? So, again, this is more of that PSA about these are the kind of 6 active areas or 3 categories that we have to look at in our life. Are we getting it perfect? Hell no. But it's always front of mind, these things at different times. So maybe pick one of these things today and work on it.
And I think on the whole career thing, a lot of people have this fear around, are they going to let me go? How long am I going to be in this position? What happens if I lose my job? It's a personal thing from internal to make a decision to know that you never put yourself in that position. And arguably the lowest hanging fruit is always the first to go in any business, isn't it? So it's always the last to arrive at that business, or the most replaceable in that business. Or how do we make ourselves not replaceable? We need to be an expert or have a niche in our life or in our role that says, well, no one can replace me, or not many people can replace me because I've got this actual skill. And it's in your hands as to what you want that skill to be.
Yeah, totally. So if we move on as the segue, the first investment can be a business. And I'll come back in again. So if we move on, like, the first kind of quote unquote financial investment after the career could be a business. Now, this is an investing thing that you can invest in. and we'll carve off shares or anything that you can buy on a platform or stock exchange, for example. But in the purest sense, like you can go to a website like Virtual or something and put money in a startup company or someone who's raising money, right? That's an investment in business. Or you can be loving what you do in your career and decide that you want to do it yourself and turn your thing into an actual business. Now, what would you say, John, would be the characteristics of a business in the sense of the self-employed solopreneur or, small business owner listening? What would you say is what's a business?
So I think there's two forms of business, and if I always think back to the good old Kiyosaki cash flow quadrant on the right-hand side, we've got business owner, we've got investor. They're both very passive in the sense that we start them up and we let them run their race, property, shares, and a system like McDonald's or somewhere we don't have to physically be 24/7. On that left-hand side is the employed and self-employed. So the self-employed is really someone that if they don't turn up, their business generally doesn't run as well. So that could be anyone that from maybe people like myself to a masseur to a physio to a plumber to a you name it.
A butcher, baker, candlestick maker, if you will.
All of those in between. So understanding if you've got a little bit of an inclination towards being a business owner, do you want to take on the world and create a system, or do you want to trade your time for money and basically buying yourself a job or starting yourself up a job, but you get more enjoyment and more control potentially over doing that as opposed to working for someone, and that autonomy of maybe being told what to do is probably how I'd define it, is a self-employed versus actual being a business owner. How would you define the two, or being a business owner in general?
Yeah, so I think if you are an employee, we'll use electrician, and then you go and start your own job and you basically are earning the same money and it's just yourself and maybe an apprentice or one offsider that you contract or something like that. Sure, that could look like a business on paper, but I think if the profit isn't there and you're earning around the same amount of money, you just own your own job. So, which is not a bad thing because you want to do life on your own terms and that suits you. Like, that's awesome. Be a contractor. But I think if we call out the definition of what we think a business actually is, I reckon one of them, John, is potentially multiple revenue streams. Mm-hmm. So, for example, in your business, you've got the buyer's advocate thing, you've got the one-on-one coaching, you've got the online course. So there are at least 3 revenue streams there. Okay. One of the biggest things that I think it is profit after salaries, and that's your own salary. So what we need to look at is if you were the electrician, and we'll make a number up, you're employed for 90 grand a year and you're like, I want to go start my own business. You run around doing all your jobs and all that. At the end of that year, you've got to make well over 90K because you've got to look at it as like when you're working in the business, market rates have to pay that position. So after that 90K salary and you've paid all expenses, is there a profit of 40 or 50 grand? Okay. Yep. So you need to really look at profit after your own salaries. Now, you could slice that. It's like, oh yeah, I make 150 grand a year salary out of the electrical business. Yeah, that's fine. But if you're paying someone market rates for that, call it 100 grand and there's 50 grand profit. So you need to look at that. I think there needs to be a good amount of systems and processes and a team of, at least 1 or 2 employees that are helping that. One of the other things with the revenue streams, I think it's that whole passive income thing. Like, how are you making money without having a direct trade of time for that money. So you've put in that time, John. You've started your online property academy, Solvair. What's it called?
Yep.
Solvair Property Academy.
My online.
Is that what it's called?
My online academy. Yeah.
Yep. So you put the initial time into that, but that sells for $200. How much does it sell for?
Yeah, $199.
Yeah, $200. Every time someone jumps on and buys that, that's effectively, the more times you sell that, the less effort that you put in, kind of thing. And your team just does any admin and maintenance on that. So that's a really good thing. I reckon a hallmark of a business is it's its own entity. It's not just a sole trader that employs people. And it is possible to be a sole trader and have staff and contract them, but I just think if you really want to punch up to that business thing, and I think the question is, if you stopped work for a couple of weeks or a month, suddenly, would the world end?
It's a good definition.
So yeah, that's kind of just so when you look at investing in that business from a, like we'll use the electrician, you've got your own business, you've got your own entity. Now that 50K profit, you've decided, no, I'm not going to take that home. I'm going to leave it in the business and it's going to be retained earnings, and I'm going to buy another van and put on the road and employ someone else. So you're investing back into that. So that's kind of, how you invest in that business. Or you go and throw money into a startup on Birchal or whatever. But what's less risk? I think starting your own business in your own vibe is probably less of a financial risk, rather than some specky that you're just a passenger on. But
so what about that space? And it's on a lot of people's lips in the world that we live in now, of I work a 9 to 5, but I'm also have a side hustle / business on the side, whether that be like Amazon, Alibaba, like startups, like anything in relation to, I want to change that ratio of active to passive income over the next 5 to 10 years. And these are the things, or this is the way that I'm going to do it. How do you address that?
Yeah. So number one, I don't believe we should be doing side hustles on the side just to have that income put back into the top line of our budget and then consuming and being consumed, right? There is a cost of living crisis at the moment. I get that. So it could be, I literally need to do a side hustle right now and, earn an extra $100 a week to pay rent. I get that. But I want you to think longer term. If it wasn't this cost of living crunch and crisis and you were doing a side hustle, I want you to only do a side hustle if you're attacking some debt. You got credit cards, consumer loans, financial mess that you've got to clean up. It could be you want to have a financial goal. I want to start an emergency fund. I want to save up $10,000 and go on a European vacay. And I'm going to do this side hustle for that. I want you to think about the side hustle as, I'm going to do this side hustle to put the money into my share investing account or save up for a property deposit. Because if you stop doing the side hustle, the world doesn't really end. It's not as if you're using the side hustle to actually literally pay your rent, or you're doing a side hustle to start to do something so you can transition to that on the side.
Yeah, and that's probably more.
Or the final way that I would suggest, or the final reason that someone may do a side hustle is because they just want to. So my whole thing is around this side hustle thing. You don't want to get to a position where you're adding an extra few hours a day or a week into your life that traps you in a treadmill where your time stuck to that. It's got to be, as we said before, short-term goals, short-term clean up debt, short-term build emergency fund. I'm doing this because I want to transition, or I just like it. Yep. And if the money stopped, well, so be it. But we've got to not think about side hustles to prop up our budget and our living expenses longer term, because you'll end up getting stuck on the work job treadmill.
Yep, good call.
Right, yeah. Well, we might move on to the last two sexy things. I might actually interview you first, John, when it comes to property as an investment. Okay. So we're talking like the 6 things you can actually invest into. When you look at it this way, as a holistic step back and looking at it, one may say that in this angle, or at this way to look at it, that the principal place of residence is kind of an investment into future you, right?
Yeah, generally not income producing as such by definition, but from a wealth creation point of view, over time, generally we see an increase in value.
Or I want to, over the long term, cap my living expenses.
Yeah, that's right. And have the ability to leverage off that to then grow further wealth, whether that be through other property or shares, business, etc. So yeah, it can be. But I think people get confused because we talk about it being bad debt and it's not income producing, but yeah, there's worse problems than having your principal place of residence and some debt surrounding that. As long as that debt is manageable for you and it's not strangling you with lack of lifestyle as a result.
So when we talk about investing into property, like for someone who's like, oh yeah, I think I do want to invest into property, like high level, what are you asking them to look at?
I think we've got to like property. We've got to understand it and we've got to be interested in it. If we're just using it as a money-making machine, I think we're maybe setting ourselves up for some rough roads. And I say that when I think back to when I first started, I just understood it. I can drive past it. I can see that everyone needs one, whether to rent out, to live in or to rent to live. So it's something that made black and white sense to me. Others might be, okay, I understand shares more. I want to read, I want to listen to podcasts about shares. That's just my thing. So I think that's the choice of the property versus shares thing. If we don't like it, we don't understand it, we don't get it, we don't want to educate ourselves further on it, then that's a red flag.
And I think what you've also kind of talking about, and you didn't say the word P, it was like that passion. Like I like it and I've got a passion for it, right? Like at the moment, at the time of recording, we've had a crap load of rain. And do you think I want to buy an investment property ever again with the troubles that I've had at one of my properties? What do you think the answer is, Johnson?
Well, you just don't buy in a flood zone.
It's on a friggin' hill. Okay, so sidebar, I haven't told John about this. So that property at Snakehaven, right? It's at the back of the property, there's a retaining wall about a little bit under a metre high, right? So we're offset. There's a street behind. The amount of water that is coming from the properties behind, right, through the retaining wall, I'll send you a video, it's wild, down the side of the house, into the garage, into the neighbour's garage.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. Anyway, I called my plumber, Ben, and I was like, hey, dude, like, can you, because he came out last year to have a look at this and it's still a problem. I'm like, hey, I need you to sort, like, can you help? He goes, leave it with me. He went to the street behind. He'd already talked to 2 houses last year. They didn't do anything. There's 5 houses that he door knocked, went to the backyard. The stormwater pits were clogged. One of them was completely clogged. One of them was damaged. One of them, their water tank was clogged at the top and overflowing. So we've basically had 4 properties, groundwater, rolled down the hill onto our property.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just, I don't have enough passion for property to do this again.
But you like the outcome of it because it's made you money, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. Like for context, we've had anywhere from 12 to 14 inches of rain the last 10 days. So it's not a regular occurrence. But for that, you've got to be up for the highs and lows of investing in property. And when we go in, we're eyes wide open to know that little things can occur along the way, that's for sure.
Yeah. And it does speak to, like, if you are doing the property from an investment point of view, you talk about it all the time, John, about having a good quality team. And for example, just one of my team members, particularly in that area, Ben from Kinked Plumbing on the Central Coast, awesome. I can bank on him.
Yes.
Like, he just sorted it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And you
because I'm just like, because I'm literally thinking, what if you had that property and you lived in another state, right? And there was this big water issue. You need someone who's switched on enough to go, this is a bigger problem. We need to door knock 3 or 4 or 5 properties behind.
Yeah.
Like, who's doing that?
Yeah, and generally, because you know the area, you can get that done. A good property manager will be able to facilitate that. They'll have a good plumber in their team or plumbers that we've got options to be able to attend to today, because they drop everything for the property manager because they know they gives them multiple work. So, yeah, that comes back to the good team of people, choosing a good property manager, choosing a good mortgage broker, choosing a good accountant, and understand that you may need to tick and flick them along the journey. You may not have the same mortgage broker from 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I just think it's really interesting if you are thinking about property as one of the options. You've got to be like, no one talks about like Glenn getting a bill for the property because he's like, oh, dude, we need to repair the water tank at the back of yours. It was wired up wrong. And we need to put a pit in the back of the property because that's rooted. It's $2,100.
Yeah.
Like, no one's talking about this. And sure, I get it. I've got an investment property and all that. I'm happy to pay out on and go ahead. I think that's fine. But I just want to call out, if you do want to be a property owner and have tenants, if you're not up to spending money on that asset when it's needed, it's not for you. He quoted the property behind to fix their stormwater, $1,600. Last year, we told them. Landlord didn't want to do it. I emailed the agent. We tracked down the agent. She called me today and said, oh, it's a lot of money. I'm like, it's a $750,000, $800,000 asset. $1,650 for some maintenance on that asset isn't a lot of money. If you don't have the money and the will to actually look after the property and your tenant, don't do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, straight up, don't be a property owner.
Yeah, and I think without you dissing property too much more, when we look at
I'll tell you another story if you want.
Wait till we get to the shares part, right?
Yeah.
When you're right about the asset. Okay, you've got an $800K asset. I put aside $1,000 or $2,000 a year for maintenance and upkeep. When we talk about the percentage of return on that property over the journey, if it's returning 5% per annum growth a year on 800K property, that's 40 grand. So I'm spending 2 grand or 5 grand to get a 40 or 35K net result, right? It's still a very good outcome. We just need to have our mindset around, there's going to be costs from time to time, but I can mitigate a lot of that on the way in when I buy. And then secondly, I've got to have the funds available to it, because too many people make short-term rash decisions when they see some of this crop up. Someone in your position, Glenn, might have said, okay, now had enough of it, stormwater's buggered, I'm going to sell this property, and then in the next 5 years, on average, returns 100K a year sort of thing. That's what I've seen happen for a lot of property investors.
Yeah, and I'm no different. Last night, like, why I'm on the phone talking, because it's 2 townhouses, everyone on a block. It's like, why am I on the phone to the owner of the first property at 9:30 last night? Like, I was just like pissed. And then you got to cool yourself. I was like, this is the first time this has happened in 3 years or something. So it is swings and roundabouts. But just a question on that before we get to the shares. My property manager, how much do you lean on them? Do I call and say, hey, Carly, this is what's going on. Here's Ben the plumber detail. Here is the other agency detail. Sort it out.
Totally. Yeah, that's their job.
Would they do that?
That's the 7 or 8% that you're up for each year.
Okay.
So that's what you need them to be doing.
And this swings back to that part about relationships, John. So, like, I had smoke coming out of my ears and all that stuff when they're like, oh, yeah, the the landlord doesn't want to pay for the stormwater repair. I'm like, writing to I was nice. I was like, hey, you let me know, blah, blah, blah. Just want to understand. And then she was nice enough to call me this morning, and she said, we'll I'll contact the owner. We'll let them know and let you know. And I said, hey, just need to let you know, this has been going on for over a year now. Like every time it rains, I can't drop this. If they're not willing to go ahead and you're not willing to give me their contact details, I'll run a property search. I'll get their details anyway. That's not the problem. And I'll basically go to court. Like, because we've got evidence that their property and lack of maintenance is causing damage to ours. So
So what you're saying is the 4 minutes you spent last night on the phone potentially could have tipped you over to the edge to sell that properperty prematurely when it's already doubled in the last 10 years.
And write an abusive email or something. But I'm like, no, I'm just going to put it out there. Yeah. Probably because I'm like medicated now for all that. But it's like, I'm not writing crazy emails, just being nice, but just letting you know I'm not dropping this because it's actually a problem.
Yeah.
Because if the water, it runs past the master bedroom downstairs, if it builds up and goes inside the garage, I've got to replace that gyprock.
T-rubble.
But if it goes in the master bedroom, we've got tenants in there, that's now a really, really big problem.
Yeah.
So, but like all this stuff, guys, could be exactly, there's three types of people listening right now, John. There's one who are like you. Yep, part of the deal. I love it. Whatever, we get it sorted. There's people like me. This is a pain in the ass. I hate this. I don't want to build a big property portfolio. And then there's probably a third person.
That's made me most of my wealth in my life. Yep.
Questionable. Hey, I've had some good businesses, Johnson. Zing. I'll save that for the property versus shares debate, shall I? We will do one of those episodes. Yeah. And then there could be someone who's like, I only do shares. Yeah. And that's why I think now, John, in that whole property thing, I'm now pivoting to commercial property. It's just, I think, less drama and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, that was a great segment on property. You telling your stories about flood issues and really pumping property up to the beast that it is in Australia, right?
Yeah. Well, okay, in finishing, okay, John, so someone's like, yes, I want to be a property investor. I want to invest in property. Like, do I just download realestate.com and search property near me?
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yeah, so first of all, don't go and buy property halfway down a hill where someone else's residue can run into your backyard. First, you need to understand if property is for you, number one, okay, and ask yourself the question, do I want to involve myself in the journey, right? Some borrowing capacity and understand the cash flow requirements, how much you can lend, what your, I suppose, sleep at night figure is that you're happy to buy in at. And then work out the type of properties that are going to give you the best result. And then once you've sort of looked at the backyard stuff, as in what's in your control, we then look to, okay, locations. So that's when we might jump on realestate.com, not do that first, right? A lot of people do that first and they're guilty of doing that and then go around in circles. So that's the last step, is finding the location that you're open to that's going to fit your strategy, i.e. your type, the price, the yield, and the cash flow in your life and where you want to take your portfolio. And then it's just a matter of, well, do I outsource it to a buyer's agent or do I go and do that myself, right? Some might want the strategy designed, which is obviously what people like ourselves do from a buyer's agent point of view. Some might be skilled enough to design their own strategy, which is fantastic, and then go and find the property themselves. But then if we're doing enough research, we can mitigate a lot of the downside associated with real estate. And that's that. I firmly believe that. Good property management team, good finance structures, good building and pest inspections, good research into terms of locations and what to look for. And then we're on our way.
Now, I asked you this at our live events, and it's a really cool thought exercise. If I had $1 million cash in my bank account tomorrow and I had a big boner for property, right? Can you say that? Whatever. Probably not. Am I buying 1 times $1 million property or 2 500s? What option do I choose?
If I've got
'Cause surely, like,
if I've got the cash flow, I can handle the lower yield, because at $1 million, the yield's going to be lower than if it was at a 500K price point. I would go the $1 million property. It's going to be invariably a better asset that has got to $1 million for some reason or another. It's usually because it's a good location or it's a good dwelling type, i.e. it's probably got some land associated with it. So generally it's 1 million, but understand the lack of cash flow will stop us from going there. So then it becomes 2 500. So a good political answer, that one.
Well, there you go. Plenty to think about this property thing. Now, shares.
Yes.
Now
I'm going to ask
one
you.
option, everyone is a share investor because you've got superannuation, right? And I think that kind of, when you want to start looking to invest in shares, you've always got to put, and John will say the same around property and even business and even career, you've always got to put the strategy first. What am I setting out to achieve? Then what we do, we go, okay, so how am I going to achieve that? Well, when it comes to share ownership, you need to first work out, well, what entity am I going to own the shares in? Some example entities that they may have and are available to you. And the first two, like, they're not entities, but they're ownership options. First one's like in your own name. So straight up, John Pigeon share account in his own name. The second option is joint names. So you might have a spouse or partner and you set up an account and it's 50-50 joint names. The third option is obviously your superannuation. Maybe not so obvious. The fourth option is in a discretionary family trust that you might already have if you're operating a business. Fifth one could be a company, which probably don't do that, but it is an option to own shares inside a company. And the sixth option is an investment bond. Now, they're kind of like, and the reason I've got this front of mind and I wanted to talk about this, John, is like we've just sent this book, The Quick Start Guide to Investing, basically to the printers as at the time of this episode's going live. And I cover those 6 options in the book.
Awesome.
And then within those, and this is why strategy always matters, you've got to look at, when you're looking at, okay, so I want to build an asset over the long term, I need to consider probably 3 things. Number 1, what happens on disposal of the asset in terms of tax? So what are the tax consequences when I sell shares in this structure or this entity?
Mm-hmm.
What are the disposal consequences if they're sold upon death? So the estate planning considerations. Because if it's in you personally, it's part of your estate. If it's in superannuation, superannuation isn't asset. If it's a joint account with your spouse, what happens? Have you notified or asked the share registry or the platform, is it joint tenants or tenants in common? Because it's probably joint tenants by default. So you just got to check. And then the third consideration that you need to consider is tax year on year. So we know each entity has its own tax consequences. So if it's in your own personal name, any income from those shares each year will fall on your personal tax return. If you had the shares held in a joint ownership, so John and I had a joint account, it's 50-50, any income is split 50-50 and lands on our tax return, personal tax return. So it's kind of the same as owning it in your own name. If we have superannuation, well, that's taxed internally. It's not an estate asset. It's a lower tax rate than my own name. So these are the things, when you are looking at investing in shares, these are the things you've got to think about first. What is my strategy? Well, I want to save up $20,000 over the next 10 years. So when my kid is 19 or 20, I can pay for their university with cash. Okay, cool. We're going to rule out a few things. Obviously, ruling out superannuation. If, by the time they're 20, you're still under age 60, got to rule that out. Or if they're 20 and you're going to be 60 at that time, can we rule superannuation in? Can we set up another superannuation account just dedicated for that? So these are all the things that I need you to think about when you're investing in shares. Now, what do you do, John, if you don't know where?
Yeah, so you would outsource it and say, well, how can I educate myself further to at least have a general knowledge to go into when I do outsource that?
Yeah, so I think my thing is, if you've rocked up with $1 million that we talked about before,
yeah,
and I know you've got to go in 7 minutes. If you rock up with $1 million like before, do I buy one property, two properties, or portfolio of shares? We're not walking into anything until we get some actual strategic advice, because there is too much to lose with that much money lopping up, okay? However, if you're like, I like the idea of investing in shares, I want to get started, well, there is no harm in downloading an investing app and putting $50 in a portfolio and just having a bit of skin in the game.
Yep.
Because if it's in your own name and you're putting $50 a week in or a month and you're just starting to learn, realistically, there is no harm if, I sell it and not like.
So invest
got this capital gain tax event. Well, I actually don't love that comment, John, because I don't. Sorry, can you hear that?
Yeah.
F-35 jets flying past my house in Newcastle.
Excited.
Love living here. I don't love the saying only invest what you can afford to lose, because I can't afford to lose any of my hard-earned money. So I only invest in what I understand. Now, if I don't understand it, I don't put lots in. I might put some money in to help me learn and understand, because I'm a practical learner, but I'm not putting huge amounts into something that I don't understand.
So in respect to individual stocks versus, say, exchange traded funds, ETFs, is that a decision we make once we've sourced some financial advice around that, or when are we making that decision?
So in answer to your question, the way I would walk through would be to start with my goals. So why am I actually investing? If your goal is, I can live off this money here, I've got money left over, life's pretty good, I actually just want to build wealth for my future, we go, okay, well, let's look at some options to do that.
Yeah.
Well, superannuation, we've already got an investment account. So that's going to be a good vehicle. So I reckon what you need to do with your share investing is, when you set your goal for the amount of money or your goal for what you want to achieve, rule out the ownership structures that will not work for that.
Yep.
So number one, we might set our ownership structure. Then what we need to do is work out, well, okay, how much money do we allocate per month? And we work that out. But at the same time, we've got to work out what our tolerance to risk is. So we work out, now, I don't think it's useful to say, well, this is your risk profile, you're 30 years old and I've got a 70% defensive risk profile and it's for superannuation. There needs to be some education there, because you've got 30 years to invest. We need you to learn and understand that you need to be in at least 70% growth. So we need to understand that if we've got a goal to save money over the next 10 years, the risk profile comes in because we might need to take on some risk to achieve that, or reduce the risk and add more money, okay? So first one is goal. Second one is, what is the ownership structure? Third one could be risk profile, conceptually. Now, within that ownership structure, we want to look at, are we going to use a brokerage account? So within that ownership structure, we've got our ownership structure, we've got our goal, we've got our risk profile. What is the brokerage account or platform that we want to use? Now, if we've got hundreds of dollars a month, well, we might go, well, we can use this broker over here for whatever reason. Or if we've got $20 a month, well, we might use an investing app. So that's kind of, so then when we find our platform or brokerage account, then we can say what investment option suits what we're trying to do. And that then leads into the discussion, do we want to do single stocks? Do we want to do a portfolio of ETFs? Do we want to do a blended ETF? So all this comes back to what are your goals and how are we most going to achieve it? The biggest thing that people fall into the trap of doing, like in the property world, I want to buy a house. What one should I buy? It's like, whoa. We've got to work out what we're actually trying to achieve first and not get into product mode straight away. So that's all I would say with the investing in shares. The best way to learn, call your super fund, look at your super statement, see what you're invested in, open the PDS of the super account, look at your investment options, start to get skin in the game. Open an app with Sharesies have been a show sponsor, Superhero's been a show sponsor. What broker do you want to do? Brokerage account? Do you want to do apps? Raise, they're a good one to get started. This is all just to kind of get started, and those apps are really useful for someone to get started. But look, plenty more to say on the share thing, and we cover kind of what I've just talked about in much more detail with lots of practical examples in the book, The Quick Start Guide to Investing. I think it's for sale at the moment. When I didn't plan to really advertise it, but we'll put a link in the show notes. If you do want to support us and pre-order a copy, that would be awesome. But
awesome.
In finishing, the 6 things that you can invest in, and, the have-tos are our health and relationships, right? The need to should be our business and career. And then the great to do is the future wealth building, and that's either property or shares. So any final comments from you, Johnson?
Yeah, I think the world we live in with the I suppose the cost of living and everything else, we the have tos are obviously there, but the would like to is the properties and the shares, I think, need to almost be a non-negotiable as well now, and that's where it's going. Where the landscape's very much changed. So sink your teeth into it the best you can.
No worries. Well, John from This Is Property, appreciate your time on the podcast today. Everyone, if you found benefit or value in this podcast, thank you for sharing it with your friends, and thank you for giving us a little 5-star wherever you're listening to this. We appreciate it so much, and we'll see you in the Facebook group. Bye, and bye John.
Bye.